Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tapping Your Creativity in my studio. Today we have incredible guest artist in my studio, and she will be joining us right now, and she's going to tell us all about herself and her incredible work, and you will be surprised on learning so much about our incredible friend Aimee, which she's right there.
Well,
um, Thank you for tapping in your creativity today in my studio.
thank you for having me.
Tell us, Aimee, who you are, where do you live, and what kind of art do you do?
Well, I live in New Orleans and I work with paper, and my studio is now in my home because of COVID. And I'm starting inside because my bigger works, I don't have them outside, but I have some inside. And I really have them here because of my friend and mentor, Karen Statsny. She came here years ago to visit, and she saw all of my art hanging, and she said, well, where's yours? You need to make your own art.
Right.
So this is an example of a large canvas piece for me, and I'm not sure if you can tell, but all of these lines, it's paper that I've painted before I started working. I painted the paper and then glued it on. I did a lot of painting over it, then adding paper. A lot of times I paint papers as I'm working if I need a certain color. So that's how I do this.
That's incredible, Aimee. I know that you really are a mixed media artist, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yep. I like mixing in magazine paper you'll see outside, papers that I've painted. I like drawing, and I like drawing with paper too. These lines are done with paper. So I use big sheets of paper and I glue them onto the canvas as I'm working, and I'm ripping it away as I'm working. And so I know what I'm going to do, yet there's some good surprises there.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
And I brought home one of my paper pieces. I was invited to be in a three-dimensional show at the Contemporary Arts Center last year. And so I got rid of my canvases, got rid of my wood panels, and I started working with paper only and seeing what the paper would do on its own. And so this is an example of paper that I've painted. Some of it is tracing paper, some newsprint, all different types of paper, because some paper.
Thank you for being so creative to have that in your home to show us, because I know in the museum when you showed that, it was a quite the incredible view of all your paper and installation, and it was amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sandra.
So tell us a little bit about the paper process that you go through.
Well, I brought some paper home. I have a friend who wanted a bright pink piece. And so the way I start, I have to paint. I have an idea of what I think I want to do, pink. So I start painting, and I paint a lot of paper, much more than what I will actually use in the finished piece, because what's in my mind and what actually I feel like doing is oftentimes different. So I have to paint a lot. Here's just the start.
Oh, I love those colors. Wow.
So all the colors, and it just starts evolving. So I'll probably paint, 3 times this much before it starts to tell me what it wants to be, where I need to go with this. And the other thing, when I'm stuck, sometimes I just start ripping the paper, and it leads me in a direction. So I use a straight edge, like this. This is actually a baking tool. And I just start ripping and seeing what happens. And when the pieces get smaller, you see different things in them. Here, I didn't even notice this subtle color change until I started ripping it. So things like that.
I love that.
Happen in the process.
So let's move now into your makeshift home studio, which is amazing.
Well, I've been enjoying it. The weather has been so beautiful. It rained for the first time this morning.
Look
but
at
it's been
that. What
sunny
a
and beautiful.
beautiful environment that you have out there. That's amazing, Aimee.
Well, thank you. It's been nice. So I have, this is where I keep all of my supplies. Here's some finished work, but my wood panels, these are birch veneer wood panels. I go to a local lumber yard and they cut them for me. They cut them and I sand them and paint or collage on them. These are all my works in progress. Here's an example of how I start my work. And this is a board that I bought from an art supply store here in New
Yeah,
Orleans.
yeah. Can you show us that piece of work and talk to us about that?
Sure, this one.
Yes.
So this is how I start my work. This is magazine paper. I was a graphic designer for years, and I'm still in love with type, page design, and so I use a lot of type in my work. It leads me. Sometimes it doesn't even show in the end, and sometimes I leave it where it does end up showing. But I'm always inspired by it, and I also am still inspired by the grid. And all of my work has a strong grid-like pattern in it. I
I
think
could,
because
yes,
of my
I see, I know your work, and for people that don't know you, I'm just gonna say, Aimee works usually very, very large. She's not afraid of size. She actually loves working in big, big canvases or pieces of paper. So this is a new kind of work for you, giving our situation that we're in today. So it's amazing because you will 100% inspire others to
oh,
work
thank you.
small and be okay with that.
Yeah, well, I have worked small in the past because I like the change in the energy.
Yes,
After I do a big piece, a lot of times I need to then sit, slow down. And so I really love that scale change. But yeah,
great.
I think not only because of my space that I have now working on a round table, you don't have a lot of space to work. And really more importantly, where my mind is right now. We're all cocooning in our homes, and that's coming out in my work.
Right.
So, I started with a wood a wood board, and then I covered it with magazine paper. And you can see this looks a lot different than the other one, but
Yep, yes,
so I try to,
yes.
they're all always different. And then here's an example of a piece in progress where
So did you add paint on that?
I did. So I first did the line work with
Yes.
with a gel pen, and yeah, with two different gel pens. And so my work, it's all about connections, and so I'm finding connections in my work and trying to understand the personality of the piece. So I
I
did
can
my
see on that
connections.
one that your lines and composition are starting to talk throughout the whole piece. So your eye is starting to move throughout the whole piece. So you don't have a focal point yet, since it's work in progress. But you are already having that language of connecting the pieces, which is amazing.
Well, thank you. And so I like in my studio, at my studio end here, I like seeing work with other pieces. This is a finished piece, and I like seeing them together because it helps me understand what I might want to do to that piece to make it work. What did I
It's
do here
incredible
that
to
worked?
see the process from when you start with just the magazines to where you end. It's truly inspiring. It's really amazing. And
Well, thank
yeah, if you
you.
want to show us that work on the table, that's great.
Well, I did this piece just the other day, and I ran into my studio to grab some things, and I happened to see this piece, and I had forgotten I did this. This was about a month ago,
Wow.
and I really was kind of surprised at how much they looked alike.
Yes, so
And
much.
so this one will inform how to finish this one.
That's great.
Thank you.
What else do you have on your table there?
Well, I wanted to show you. So when this COVID thing first started, I started doing these super little pieces. And I'm realizing from my work before this happened that it was about connecting, and now it's much more about cocooning, like I already said. But there's an added element of they're much more puzzle like, and I'm very close to them now, so I don't quite understand why I'm in this kind of puzzling, figuring out mode, but I can kind of guess. But I'm finding my pieces. I'm trying to figure out the puzzle, and this whole thing has been so confusing and so mysterious. So I think my work is showing that.
Yes, yes. It will be very interesting to see when we're done with this COVID-19 how artists are, you know, showing their emotions in their art.
Yeah. So I was thinking how oftentimes I'll dream about my work, and it will help me understand what I need to do to finish it. And so I started reading about Carl Jung and how dreams are reflections of our unconscious. And the other thing he said, which I thought was so relevant, I wrote it down, that dreams do not need to be interpreted to do their job, to perform their function. And it's
Correct.
just like our art. We don't need to interpret art for them to do their job. So by
100%.
my making them, they're doing their job for me. Eventually I do stop and I try to understand, but it's really not the most important part of it.
So let's talk about, what do you think the jigsaw puzzles, how do you think they work in your mind?
Well, I think you're trying to get me to do the segue to the puzzle, to the ideas I have for people at home.
I do.
Is that right?
Yes.
So I was doing a puzzle with my daughter, who's been my camera person today. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
And now you can put it on the tripod too. There's a little tricky part here. So we were doing a puzzle together, and I realized yeah, I see it. Thank you. I realized when I was getting toward the end of working on the puzzle, I was so much better at seeing the color nuances and the scale. Thank you. You're done. Wait, it's a little.
Well,
less.
you can move
Angle it
back
up.
a little bit so we can see you. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, we just can't see a lot of your table, but that's okay because you'll come forward and show us what you're talking about. So it's all good.
Thank you. So I realized the color nuances. It was such a good lesson in really looking and seeing the color nuances, scale differences. It's a jigsaw puzzle it's a photograph of boats on water, and it was really important to be able to see the scale differences in the pieces. You knew if something was in the foreground or something was in the background. Such a good thing to train your eye. And the other thing, obvious thing, is the shape of the pieces. So doing jigsaw puzzles is a great thing to do to help your art, because art is all about seeing.
Right.
You wanted me to come up with 3 things for students, maybe beginner.
Before we go there, who is your inspiration and what inspires you, you think?
Wow. So much besides magazines. Architecture. I talked to a writer friend of mine, Pia Z. Earhart, and it's so inspiring to talk to a writer about her process. And it's exactly like my process. We just work with different tools. Right. So that's incredibly inspiring and helps me understand my work better.
Yes.
Gosh, everything in life, everything inspires me. It's really hard to pick any one thing out.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Let us tell us about like 3 tips or 3 lessons that you would give to beginners trying to, that they're home now and they want to be creative and they don't even know where to start. So tell us a little bit about what your
I thought of so many things when you said, what are some tips? There's so many tips. You have to work hard. strong value changes. But when I started to try to synthesize everything down, what it all came down to is really being able to see. If you can't see as you're working, if you don't know what is working and what's not working, it's hard to go forward, right? Because we're making decisions every second with our work. Correct. So training your eye to see is really the most important thing. And yesterday, my artist friend, who I think you know, Nancy Hirsch-Lassen, New Orleans artist, she sent an article about her good friend, Jeffrey Frankel. He grew up with his family. He's a gallery owner in San Francisco, one of the premier photography galleries in the world. And I was reading the article, and he said his most important lesson was a teacher who taught him that you have to look. And he credits his whole career and his ability as a gallerist is knowing how to look. And so I know that's a huge thing for people, but
will you show us will you show us how you look?
Okay, so I thought of some ways that we can work with it while we're in quarantine. So I love magazines, and we all have magazines. And, you know, just like anything, if you can look at really beautifully designed magazines, like this one is Garden and Gun. Sure if you're familiar. Whoop, there we are. And I opened up and saw this spread about grits. Is that good?
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
And, you know, when you look at this, you immediately know what this article is about. You know the most important thing on the page. Your eye goes where the designer wanted your eye to go. Then your eye is brought around to a different part of the page, and you get the whole picture. And when a page design, they want to grab your attention. This is what we're trying to do when we make art, right?
Yes.
Grab our attention, give a clear understanding of what your piece is about, have a focal point. So you can study page design. Why do I like this? Why don't I like this? Why do I think this is working? Why isn't it working? Another example, I opened up this spread in the Wall Street Journal magazine about new Hermes lipsticks. And, you know, they have a wonderful photographer who they hired to take a picture to illustrate the lipsticks.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful photograph. And I was trying to understand why the composition works so well. And I thought, it's really a classic composition. And it reminded me of the classic Madonna and Child paintings.
Yes, because
so
it's the perfect triangle.
You see that? And your eye goes to the lipsticks that don't have a top, just like your eyes go to the baby, Jesus.
Yes.
So,
yes,
you know, that's training your eye to see.
Yes. And I agree. The composition is so much the same between one and the other. And it's talking about contemporary, today artists, photographers that can actually get you there. And then we as artists, then we have our trained brain to go back and look at the history of art and compare those two. So you just did that for us, which was incredible because our minds are never trained to do that. But I think like what you're saying is train your mind in a different way when you open an ad and see what captures your attention, because it's so important to really, as artists, get bombarded with a lot of ideas. And sometimes we don't even understand where they're coming from. But when we sit down and take the time to do it, and right now, what we have is time.
We have time. Well, and I think that it doesn't matter the materials that you have. You need to have a strong composition.
Correct.
So studying composition is really important. I don't start a piece and think, I want my composition to look like this. I never do that. Because, and also I don't think there's clearly no one composition that works.
Right.
You know, as soon as you put a rule in,
and it switches and it changes every time.
Yeah, and I like my compositions to be a little wrong, or they would be boring, right?
Right.
So I can't teach you how to, do a good composition, but I know that the more we understand why we like a composition and what's working about it, it will come out in our work more and more.
Right.
So other things to look at is beautifully designed interiors. So when
Can you come in a little closer because we're
sure,
seeing some glare?
sure. Now can you see it?
Yep, it's a little better. Yep.
Okay. So interior designers, if the space is well done and beautiful, like they are in good magazines,
Yes.
there's usually a strong focal point. We clearly understand the feel of the room. This is a fabulous casual, family room. Um, there'll be a mix of warm and cool colors. There'll be little surprises, the bike, the unicycle on the wall, and the the little splash of yellow, the splash of this pink, the little bit of stripe. It's all what we try to do in a painting, right? We try to
Right.
have variety, have focal point, have so again, studying interiors, beautiful photographs of interiors.
And by looking at interiors as well, I can tell you from I'm a daughter of an architect, and I grew up with, just looking at floor plans and talking about that all the time and looking at beautiful architectural structures and the lines and shapes that we don't see on the naked eye. Like we just, we kind of just flip the magazine and go to the next page. If we take time to really analyze either a floor plan or a magazine, we can really see how they utilize the focal point, the angles, the use of color, texture, because all the different materials that they use, it's all different textures, right? So they
Yep.
use stone, they use wood, they use marble, so for the artists, it's another way to get inspired to use all these materials and apply them to their own work in a different way. But it's definitely an inspiration.
Actually, that reminds me of the piece that. So when I started to incorporate magazine into my work, I wanted to because of, like you said, the textures and the colors. I didn't feel like the way I painted textures. It wasn't inspiring, but the textures I found in magazines was. And so I started looking at magazines, and one thing that I would do is I would turn them upside down, because when it's right side up, your mind just sees that's a boat, that's a this, that's a that. When you turn it around, you're freed from that, and you can then appreciate and really see, is that a texture I want to include? Is that a color? When it's right side up, your brain just analyzes it too quickly and moves on.
That is so true.
Right.
And your brain really starts to work in so many different ways. And really, we never think of doing that with our own magazines. We never think of, switching them around and challenging ourselves. So this is an incredible way of really training our minds to do something completely different. I think people will never look at a magazine the same way again after hearing us today.
Well, and another thing I could say is that, when you look at it like this, you see one thing. Then when you cut it apart, it gets you to see it differently too. When you pull everything away and only see,
right,
it helps you focus in on what's really there.
Right. And I think what we do nowadays, if you agree with this, is because of our technology, we are able to photograph our own work and really have a detailed picture of what we're working on. And we can convert it into white and black, see the value that we have. If we're on point, on what the value of color that we're using. The ability that we have on our technology today is incredible, because before they didn't have that. They couldn't do it. This is an automatic, boom. You take a picture of it, you zoom into it, you convert it into black and white, and then you see if you're on point or not with the value of your colors. Would you agree?
Yes, and I also like that when I take it, I can look at it very small. It's really like getting very far away
Right.
from your work. So that's also helpful.
Yes.
In looking at your composition also, when you see it small, instead of seeing all the beautiful details that you're so in love with, it helps you see what is the overall composition.
Right.
And that's bringing me back to my writer friend who talks about having to get rid of her pretties when she's writing, and she writes something that is just so beautiful. Sometimes the final piece, it has to get edited out. That beautiful line helped her get where she is, and then you have to say bye. And it's the same way with our art, right? Sometimes we have these beautiful things. There's a lot in this piece that I'm trying to figure out what to edit out, and I love so much of it, but I know a lot of it is going to have to go for the good of the final piece, you know?
Yes, 100%. And what do you think, what are your favorite materials that you use other than magazines? But what do you, so if you have your wood board, what do you do?
Well, there are a few things I can't live without. So if I am stuck on a deserted island, or here, when I thought about what do I have to grab before I can't go back to my studio, it's my matte medium.
Can you show that closer to us so we see
sorry.
what you use?
Yep. Oh, and it's going to be backwards. So it's Liquitex matte medium. I also use gloss. You know, sometimes works will call for gloss.
Okay.
But in general, I work with matte. I feel like it, especially.
Do you use the medium as a glue? What are you?
Oh, I use this as a glue. Yes. So, yeah, this is my glue. I use it with this and I apply it. But I wanted to say, I definitely, with my students, I teach at the New Orleans Academy of Fine Art, and we're not going to have any class this year. It was going to be like a workshop environment. We're doing everything through Zoom, and it's been wonderful. A few of the people I haven't even met in person. But so the reason I suggest using a matte medium, especially for beginners, gloss and matte, it's another element. And there's so many things we work with. We have to work with texture, with color, with composition, with value. There's so much we're trying to figure out when we finish a piece, and adding in gloss versus matte is just an element that you do not need to add in until you're ready for it. Just like with paints, when I first started, I worked with one yellow, one red, one blue, black and white. You can get almost every color. You
know, it's very interesting that the commonality throughout all my interviews with all the artists have been primary colors. Start with primary colors, know your colors, know your color wheel, and you can do anything from there.
Now, I could not teach color. I understand color just through feel, I realize. I can't tell anyone how to get someplace, but so I do a lot of, this is a good activity for beginner painters to do. Find magazine, I'm going to keep going back to the magazine, find magazine colors and mix your paints to match the magazine paper. So they have so many different colors, and to try to figure out how to get there is a great thing, because I'm doing it constantly. When I'm painting, I love having the raw look, but on the other side of that, if everything looked raw and messy, and it wouldn't be believable. It would look like I'm not serious about the piece isn't pulled together, right? So along with that rough and raw, there has to be a finished, pulled together look. So I'm constantly having to mix the colors of the magazine papers to clean up a little bit of something that gets too much attention, want it to go away, and to pull it together. So I have to do that every day. And what I do, I think this works well for me, and it might work well for your viewers. I just can't use a palette. It doesn't work for me. I mix in small containers, or large containers when I'm working large. So I work with, you know, big Tupperware type things. But I'll use, you know, little yogurt containers.
I remember those from our workshops.
Yes. And some, you know, I'll use some Tupperware or things that we get at the store. But on, this is going to be backwards, but my, on these little yogurt containers, I found this to work so well. And I can't live without it either. And it's Glad Press and Seal.
Yes.
So I can mix a color and it will last for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's why, you know, excuse me a minute. That's why this for me works so well. Because I have my paint ready to go and accessible, and it stays for days at a time. So I highly recommend our viewers that are just starting and mixing colors to put them in here. If you don't have something like this, you can certainly go into yogurt containers and put that paper on top. It will last for a long time. I do this with my acrylic paints. I sometimes I need to add a little glaze to them to keep them you know, fluid, but normally they just last for a long time. So that's another great suggestion for our viewers.
The other thing that you made me think of, if for beginner painters, it's really important to not be afraid to use your supplies.
Right.
You know? So if it's difficult to use a lot of paint, if you buy Golden or Liquitex, buy a student grade paint, so that you can be generous with your work. Right. You're not going to help yourself if you're feeling like you can't use your supplies. So as you can, add in the better paints, and you'll understand the difference. And you know, they're so luscious. They have so much more pigment.
I'm going to put you in the spot and see if we can pull this or not. But people are asking if you could demonstrate how to apply the piece of magazine into the wood and how you use the glazing. So you think you have that?
Sure. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this will be great, because then we need to see how you do this.
Okay, so if I get it on my good jeans, I'm going to be really upset. Actually, another thing I can't live without is my rag that I keep in my paint clothes, you know, right there to wipe my hands. A lot of my friends use, I'm going to angle this up. Well, I guess it needs to be here. Can you see?
Yeah, you can go back a little bit by the chair. That's perfect. Yep, that's great.
You can see the board?
Yes.
Okay, a lot of my friends use gloves. I don't, because I need to feel what I'm doing, but
move it to the right a little bit, because the comments are
my right or
your left, sorry.
Okay.
And back a little bit.
And back?
Yep, a little more back. There we go. That's perfect.
I'm going to be off the table if I go any more.
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay, so I'll take paper, and you know, I'm seeing this light value, so I'm craving dark value. So I'll take you know, some paper. I'll put some of the glue on it, and I'll just start the gel medium.
The gel medium.
And the gel medium comes in a heavy and an extra heavy, and I'll use the extra heavy when I work on
Canvas.
heavier papers. But this is a good one to start with. Just
Okay.
regular gel matte gel. And I do like Liquitex because of the product, but also the top stays on better than golden. And when you're working with a gallon, you know.
Yes, you have to make sure that that stays.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can see this, but my page is down, and then I squeegee out the extra. I'm just going to call it glue. Extra glue, which you don't want bubbles. Again, that's going to look like you don't, like your piece isn't well done if you have
Bubbles.
that's like a mistake. Unless I want wrinkles on my paper pieces that are free floating, that's intentional. But bubbles and
Can you show us closer what you just
break
did?
the rules, but bubbles in general, in my mind, will look like it's a mistake. So what? Okay, so I think I've squeegeed out all the air bubbles, and this does take time. You know, students, I'll tell them to, you know, to really work on this so that they get this part down, so that they're not fighting those bubbles. Another thing you can do, if there is a bubble in the middle and you can't get it out, you can use the tip of this. This is a palette knife, so it's pointy and sharp. You have to be careful. But you can tap it onto the bubble. And I like when there's some glue on there, I can go back over it, pushing really hard, and get that bubble out. And I think a little bit of glue might go in there, but it kind of helps that bubble come out. And you know, this is just a first layer. I'll end up with a few layers. So what happens here, it's okay. You know, I just want to get those bubbles out.
Right, right.
All right. And then
I think that the fact that you just said, you know, that you can use the edge of that, it's okay. People think that you have to treat your art with such delicacy.
No, and as I did it, some of the paper ripped away. You see that?
Right.
And it just has to get pushed down flat. I'll end up with a lot of texture at the end, but you want it to look intentional.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
intentional, but not afraid.
Yes, exactly. So the other thing that's important in these boards and all boards is the corners, because how to treat the corners. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. I don't know if we have time now.
Yeah, we have yes, we do.
We have a little bit of time?
Yeah.
So there are a couple of ways of handling the corner. If you put the glue back down. If I take an edge, can you see?
Yes.
I'll go as close as possible to the corner on this side. Burnish it down. Okay. Not doing it so perfectly.
That's okay.
Then I'll do the other side.
Oh, that way you have it completely
So you see
covered.
how it's very, very close to the corner?
Yes.
So that's one way to do it. I think that's probably the easiest way. If at the end, you know, I might either like that little bit of wood shows, or I might mix that blue color and paint it out.
And go at it. Yeah.
Another way you can do it is just like you do a gift. So it's a little more tricky, but I'm going to burnish this down. I'm going to show you the back so you can see the papers going off on both sides.
Yes.
I can rip away. Can you see what I'm doing?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to rip away at an angle. See it against my dark shirt. You see how it's angled?
Yes, yes.
And then you pull it over.
Oh, and voila.
See, so there's a little bit of a point there, so I need to deal with that. But
once you have that panel, how do you display that, or what do you do with it? Do you frame it? Do you put it on a different panel? What do you do?
Well, in the past, I've wanted it just to float off of the wall, kind of just very modern. And so I've glued little wood strips to the back.
Okay.
And added a 2D rings and wire.
Yes.
2D rings. And it just sits against the wall like that. One collector bought it, took those off, and put this in a frame that came, and kind of mounted it, I guess.
Yes.
Came out, and then the frame was out here, and that was a beautiful way to handle it.
Yes.
So
that's amazing. That's such good tips that you're giving us all, because we sometimes don't know what is the best way to display our things. And especially when you're working with wood, it could get really tricky because it could get really heavy too, depending on the type of woods that you're using and the type of and the sizes that you're using.
Right, and it's an extra thing that you might not want to have to deal with.
Right.
When you buy this, and it has the all you need is D-rings and wire. You put it right in, done.
Yep, that's easy. But it's a different kind of look. It's a different kind of look.
It's a different look. So I work on these very differently. This is, they're both like little sculptures. The sides are very important when you do this. This side is very important, but it's very different. The thinness, there's something about that so I make choices based on that.
And then once you have all your layers of paper that you decide to use, then what kind of paint do you use to go on top of that?
Well, I like golden. You mean the brand, or?
Well, just
do you use
acrylic? Do you use oil? Do you use pastels? Do you use charcoal? Okay. What do you like using?
Sorry. I use acrylic paint.
Yes.
It works well for me because I like mixing water with it, and I know a lot of my friends. You have to be careful how much water you add in acrylic. So
yes,
do as I say, not as I do. Be careful. You can also use a medium, a matte medium with your paints.
Right.
But
Do you use oil crayons at all?
I don't. I've used them in the past. They take too long to dry. It's a mess. I really, acrylics work so well for me because I work quickly. I respond quickly. I can't wait. I don't know. I used one of those once. And
I have the same problem. We don't have a lot of patience on waiting for paint to get dry.
Well, it was like a year. Like, I don't know why it took so long.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that my acrylic paints dry so much faster working outside with no climate control.
How is the humidity affecting your work or not?
Really, just the how quickly the paint dries, which I can deal with that. Dries in my little cups, not so much on my piece. Okay. On my piece, what's great, in my studio, I keep fans nearby. Like, I always joke that they're my best friend, because as I'm working, I'm putting fans on my things so that they can dry quickly, so I can work with them. Here, I don't have to.
So when you apply paper onto, let's just talk really quickly about your process on canvas. When you apply paper on canvas, do you use still the same type of medium, or do you change it? Do you go, what do you do so it doesn't crinkle, or when you stretch the canvas, is it affected? How does that work?
Well, I use the same materials. The only difference I notice is that my stretcher wants to kill me because it's so hard to stretch my work when it has so many layers of paper. Right. It gets really stiff.
Yes.
So that's difficult, but it's not my problem.
But it stays, and you don't have any problems. You haven't had any problems.
I haven't had problems,
Yeah.
knock on
Yeah.
wood.
Yeah.
I haven't had problems with that. Working vertically, working on canvas that's already stretched with that bounce. Brenda talked about that on Wednesday. I don't like the bounce.
Yeah.
So I will work on canvas unstretched.
Yep.
On a wall. I put it on my table, on the wall, on the floor, whatever I need. And once it gets to, I'm at a stopping point, I'll send it to my stretcher. I'll get it back, and it's much stiffer. So I don't mind that there's much less bounce.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Once you apply paint to the stretch canvas, it really takes a different kind of bouncing, and it's just very different to work that way. I'm
Yes.
like you. I like to work on unstretched, so that's just me though. So
and store-bought or pre-stretched canvases really don't interest me at all. I don't know why. The large piece that I showed in the foyer, even though none of the canvas showed by the end, it started out as this beautiful French linen.
Yes.
This rich, kind of earthy brown. It was
Yeah.
so inspiring.
Yeah.
And the pre-stretched canvases from the store just do not, I can cover them with paper and it's fine, but there's something about that,
Yes.
everything builds. And when you're uninspired by the materials, it's just.
Yes, I do have to agree. And maybe we'll have a part 2 with you when we can go back to our studios and you can show us our big work, and
that would be great.
And maybe you can do a demo on the big canvases that you do.
That would be great.
So tell us, please, Aimee, where can we find you? What's your social media platform?
Well, I'm mainly on Instagram. I do have a Facebook account, and my Instagram is just my name. I actually typed it out for you because it's kind of long.
That's great. That's fantastic.
And I have a website.
Perfect.
And
I'll make sure to tell our viewers where to find you as well.
I'm sorry, what?
I will tell our viewers where to find you as well.
Oh, great. And I'm with a gallery here in town in New Orleans, Jonathan Ferrara Gallery, and also Spalding Nick's Fine Art in Atlanta.
That's amazing.
And I believe both will bring people through by appointment, and they both are showing work online. So yes. Everybody's working hard to make this work for everybody.
Yes, everybody is. And before we go, Renda wants us to know that there's a fixative for the oil pastels if you ever decide to do that, and you can probably work on top of that. So we'll definitely look into that, and I can't thank you enough, Aimee.
Well, thank you, Sandra. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
You were amazing. You're an amazing teacher, inspiration, and I'm sure people will never see magazines again the way that regular people see them. So thank you for teaching us something new.
My husband always says, "You're not going to rip that up, are you?"
I know. All right. Well, thanks
everybody.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a great day. Take care and be creative.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.